Welcome to Leap Today. I'm Janelle Millard, president of the Leap Enterprise. Before we dive in, I want to set the stage for a conversation led by our host, Bill Farmer, vice president of Leap Media. Today, Bill sits down with an extraordinary leader, Christine Merdon. Christine is a professional engineer, CEO of Murdon Strategies, a member of the National Academy of Construction, and a former acting architect and deputy architect of the Capitol. Across more than 3 decades, she has shaped some of America's most iconic landmarks, including the U.S. Capitol, the White House, the Supreme Court, the Library of Congress, and the Smithsonian's National Museum of African American History and Culture. Her impact on the built environment is remarkable, and her leadership continues to inspire innovation and excellence across the industry. Now, let's join Bill and Christine for this powerful conversation.
Christine, I'm thrilled to have you as my guest today. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. And I'm thrilled to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Yes. This is going to be fun.
It will be a lot of fun.
You've had an amazing career journey. And you've told us how important the LEAP principles are to you in shaping and transforming organizations. And I'm really excited to hear your story and what you've learned along the way. So you have a master's degree in civil engineering from the University of Maryland. So take me back to those early college days. And can you tell me what first drew you to engineering? And was a moment that you actually decided, okay, this is the path for me?
Yes, there was a moment. It wasn't quite at the first day at the University of Maryland. I had an interest in becoming a landscape architect and going to college. However, I had to figure out how to pay for it. My mom is directly from Germany, and she's a hairdresser. And when I was growing up, my father had a mental illness. So the resources in our organization, in our home were very limited. So I started at the community college, started drafting when you had drafting. And my professor at the time worked at the local Navy base. And he made an offer in class one day. They said, does anybody want a full ride in college? And I raised my hand very quickly because we have opportunities for a full scholarship at the Navy base.
That's fantastic.
If you're interested in becoming an engineer. So that was a great opportunity. And I could go to school anywhere I wanted. They paid 100% tuition and books. I'd come and work during the summers for the Navy and then had a job afterwards. That completely changed the trajectory of my life. And then I asked him, what is the closest thing to landscape architect? And he said civil engineering. And that was that moment that made me go into the field, which it is a great field and never regretted it.
Yeah. We're going to talk a little bit about your Navy experience in a minute. So you also are a lifelong learner, and you're a PhD candidate.
Yes.
At the University of Maryland in the Department of Civil and Environmental Engineering.
Yes.
So I got that right.
Yes,
that's good.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, what's the focus of your doctoral studies?
The focus is about mental health and wellness in the construction industry. When I was working at the Architect of the Capitol, I had an employee that took his own life. And I always wondered what I could have done better. So I decided to put my focus on leadership, project leadership, and ways that can be implemented to make better leaders in the construction industry. So that's about learning about self-awareness, about doing 360s, being empathetic and being vulnerable, very similar to the tenets of the LEAP organization, that, applying those principles make organizations better. And I think it's very critical since the construction industry, for every one person that dies on a job site, 5 die by suicide. And we're ranked number 2.
That is incredible.
This is not where we want to be, number 2 of all industries. So developing, doing research and developing my thesis to identify ways that leaders can show up that can move the needle on that.
That is such meaningful work. I mean, I applaud you.
Thank you. Thank you.
So you started your career as a project engineer with the U.S. Navy, and then you moved into a management role with the Naval Facilities Engineering Command, or NAVFAC. I think I got that
Yes,
right.
NAVFAC.
NAVFAC and White House Military Office.
Yes, WAMO. Yes.
Oh, is that the acronym? I love acronyms. So that's a pretty incredible way to start out. And I think you're familiar with Transformation Systems Incorporated.
Right.
They're the exclusive license provider for all LEAP products and services.
Yes.
And they have partnered for years with the U.S. Navy.
Decades, right?
Decades, yes, decades, to strengthen leadership at every level. So there's that overlap with the Navy.
Yes.
So before we dive into your early career, when you look back at your time with the Navy, what stands out most to you, either in the work itself or the culture that you were part of?
I think the culture and the people. I think I had a great opportunity, both working at a Navy base and also working at the White House Military Office, to work with and under great leaders that really modeled what great leadership looks like. You know, some people come into leadership and want to come into leadership being in charge, but I always say it's actually upside down. You know, the leaders need to figure out how you support your organization, how you show up every day, how you provide, you know, I believe in servant leadership, moving obstacles out of people's ways, developing a culture of cohesiveness, and the Navy was very good at that. And I was fortunate that, you know, they took an interest in me, which made me a better person, and they let me push my boundaries as far as doing projects and, you know, looking at work I wanted to do.
I mean, that's a great foundation. I mean, it applies to private sector, it applies to federal government, it applies to even nonprofits.
Yes.
To take that approach and in leadership.
Right.
So speaking of your early career, we all have either mentors or moments that nudge us from just being good at the work to actually leading the work. So who or what helped you make that leap?
I think there were, you know, supervisors that helped me make the leap. They they gave me confidence in my ability. They challenged me. You know, they took me to task too when I wasn't doing a good job, you know, but they did it in a way that I didn't feel like I was in trouble, that they were invested in me just being better at my work. I had opportunities to go to training. You know, some of the training included the 7 habits of highly effective people. And I think, you know, by giving me that confidence, I got the confidence to apply for jobs at the White House Military Office, asking myself not why me, but why not me? So
exactly, yeah. No, that's So, as you look back at your early years, what were some of the biggest challenges that you had to face, and how did you overcome them?
So one of the biggest challenges early in the career, when I was in college at the University of Maryland, there were only 6% women in the engineering program.
That's a low percentage.
Very low. And I think it's a 20-25%. We've made a lot better gains. So many times when I was in a meeting or walked into a room or walked on a project, there was not the natural assumption that I was the engineer. There was more of an assumption that I was the admin person or even the marketing or business development person as my career progressed, which created a challenge of being able to work with the team, maybe providing direction, being taken seriously as an engineer. That still exists today in some form or fashion, especially with younger women. They see that. And it's still something we're trying to overcome in the industry as far as stereotypes. A lot of people are working towards this.
Yeah.
So that was one of the biggest challenges that I saw. But, you know, once I sat down and they started working with me, they realized, okay, she has an idea of what's going on. She knows what she's doing. And that ended up dissipating shortly over time.
Yeah. I mean, I could totally relate as far as just being a male but starting off. But then afterwards, it's okay. So you had to constantly
had to
prove yourself.
Yes.
Which probably built a lot of
Well, I mean,
stamina.
it did, but you also found cheerleaders and
Yeah.
people that would support you, that saw that and would really work hard to bring you along or build you up, or really kind of change that dynamic in an organization or even a room.
Yeah, that's good to hear.
Mm-hmm.
On the flip side of that,
Mm-hmm.
what were some of the big wins or moments of success that gave you the confidence to actually seek out bigger leadership roles?
A couple of things. I went from working at a local military base to working for the White House Military Office, and the acceptance rate to work at that and the vetting rate it really screens a lot of people out.
I'm
So I
sure.
was like very happy to work at the White House Military Office around all these amazing leaders and other people. So that was one. And the other one is I maintained a relationship with the University of Maryland by being on an engineering board. And I started going to association meetings or participating in professional associations. So I developed relationships. So that gave me the confidence to apply for different jobs. When I got my master's degree, I was given a leave of absence by the White House Military Office to get my master's degree. But when I was there, I realized I wanted to go to private industry, but just meeting people to hear their stories about what they did.
Mhm.
And that's when I made the jump to private industry, and that made me more confident to go to other career paths.
So let's go into what happened after the Navy. You joined McKissack McKissack, which is a national architectural engineering program and construction management firm. And you eventually rose to the executive level of senior vice president of program and construction management. And wow, I mean, that's a huge achievement.
Yes.
So you were in the middle of complex programs and teams and high visibility outcomes. And I can imagine it was like a whole another level of leadership for you. So I'd like to know, what were some of the biggest challenges that you had for the transition from the U.S. Navy to the private sector?
That's a really good question. So at McKissack and similar firms, there was a difference. With the Navy, everybody understands the same language. They understand the acronyms. They speak in acronyms, and they have the same standards. But going to private industry, it's a collection of people that come from different perspectives. So they each have an approach to, build a project or manage a large project, and then coming to consensus about what is the best way to do it. And sometimes it's great when you have different opinions and you work through opinion to have a consensus, but making sure that everybody's listening, I think, is really important. So the transition from speaking the same language and standards to not having standards was a challenge at first, but ended up being a strength because different people came with different ideas and were more creative.
Yeah. I know for the military, the line of command?
Chain of command.
Chain of command is so important. And I knew from being in private industry, while you have a hierarchy,
yes,
it's blurred
yes,
at
it
times.
is.
And so I can appreciate that transition challenge.
Yeah, and the smartest person in the room is not necessarily the highest ranking. It's usually somebody that's been doing this for a long time or has a unique understanding.
Yeah, and the best leaders that I've worked with are the ones that recognize that.
Yes.
So were there any mindsets or habits from your time at the Navy that actually gave you an edge in the private sector?
I think a couple of things. I thought the standards was actually very helpful because if I had a project team, it was helpful for them to have a standard instead of reinventing the wheel all the time. We worked on many diverse projects. We worked on school programs, we worked on housing programs, we worked on road programs, but you could use the same standards. So I think that was very helpful. I think also caring about people. I think the Navy and military organizations do a really good job about teaching you how to care about people, that the people that you work with are people. They have lives beyond work. and they have a lot going on, and making sure that you care about your people and you listen to what they have to say and remove those barriers that they have.
Great to hear, because I think the perception isn't what you just said. It's that it's all very rigid, and that, but it sounds like there's empathy, there's caring,
Absolutely.
there's support, and that's so important across any business or government.
Yeah, I mean, both my brothers served in the military, one in the Navy as a Navy officer, and also my older brother as a Marine. So I saw that myself when I was working for the Navy, but also from my brother's perspective.
A lot of military there.
They helped pay for the college.
Yeah.
We all went through school because of the U.S. Navy.
As the SVP, you weren't just overseeing projects, but you were implementing real transformation across large teams, processes, and results. What kinds of transformational decisions or challenges define that role for you?
I think a couple of things. Understanding the value of relationships. I was not only managing projects, but I was building work, creating a backlog. When I was working for McKissack, we had a pretty good presence in Washington, D.C. We had great projects and programs, including the D.C. public schools, but we were pursuing the Major League Baseball stadium for the Nationals. We were pursuing the Martin Luther King Memorial. We were pursuing the African American Museum, as well as managing these projects. And the common denominator in all of this were the relationships with clients, relationships with, potential employees, our existing employees. That was really important. And also, we were also growing in Chicago, and leveraging relationships to help grow in Chicago was really, so that was one aspect. Communicating with a team. One of the things that I have carried throughout my career is, I was not just communicating by email, I was showing up. And showing up is so important for showing up at a job site to make sure people understand that you are interested in the work that they do. And it's important to the client that you're showing up in front of somebody that I'm trying to do business with, not just emails, texts, or letters, but showing up is really critical. So that personal connection, that communication aspect is really important. And listening. I always tell my daughter, you've got, 2 ears and 1 mouth. So listen, because the clients, especially when you're pursuing work, will tell you what they want. Employees,
if you give them a chance.
Exactly. Employees will tell you what they, many employees don't want to stay stuck. They want to grow with the company. Okay, what does that mean? What do you want to do? Or they have wonderful ideas. Some of our great ideas came from employees wherever I work. So I think, the relationships, the communication, showing up is really important.
Yes. And actually, that's one of the masteries within the LEAP framework. It's interpersonal mastery.
I think is probably one of the most important. Another one I would say,
and I tend to agree with you.
I had some great mentors at McKissack McKissack, including Daryl McKissack, but being open for people to tell you your blind spots. A lot of people sometimes don't want to take criticism, but if presented correctly, people are looking out for your best interests when they're providing you feedback on ways you can perform better. And I was fortunate to do that at McKissack. I had a great relationship with Daryl McKissack, and she was able to, we were mothers, became mothers at the same time, and she was able to help nudge me left and right to get me to be a better person, a better leader too.
Yeah, that's so important to be able to have your ears open.
Yes.
To listen to that process and think, okay, how can I change? Particularly if you're a leader, what can I do to make myself a better leader? Because I mean, change and transformation of your personal self is just as important.
Oh, absolutely.
So I appreciate that. So speaking of construction, which has been a big part of your life, I know that most of the leadership roles are still overwhelmingly held by men. But as a woman, you became the SVP of Program and Construction Management. What helped you break through the industry where the leadership roles are still primarily held by men?
As I mentioned, involvement in associations, because ended up being I ended up being an officer in associations. So I was at the table with a lot of leaders in construction. So we became friends. I'm still friends with many of them, decades
Back
later.
to relationships.
And yeah, that's going to be a theme
Right.
because it's so important. Being credentialed. I'm a professional engineer. A couple of years back, I was recognized by my expertise by being inducted into the National Academy of Construction.
Congratulations.
Which is kind of the Hall of Fame, if you will, of the construction industry. Having mentors and advocates were very important, and then identifying those advocates, and some of them are still advocating decades later. So I think those are some keys, and also working really hard.
Yeah, I was going to say, but get back to the really proving yourself.
Yeah, I think that can't be lost. Working really hard, working long hours, working smarter. I always had an interest, as you said, in lifelong learning, but also even technology. I always tried to stay up with technology, and then developing a sense of teams with the people that I was working with. Not that it's all about me, but it's all about us. I'm here to support the us, the team.
I can't imagine having the opportunity to actually have you as a leader. I have to say I'm really inspired.
Thank you.
So regarding the women in leadership and construction, if you were to sit down with a young woman today that was just starting out in engineering and construction, what advice would you give her?
It's a great and rewarding career. If I were to go back and do this again, I would do the exact same thing. I'm able to drive down streets and show my daughter, who's now 22, I worked on that. I worked on this. So there's tangible results about what your work is. And so,
how rewarding is that?
It's very rewarding. She's able to walk through, we go to the Nats ballpark, or even, my work at the Capitol. And, but she's able to recognize that, okay, that's what she did, that hard work that, took her away from home sometimes. That's why it was there. Don't be intimidated by past stereotypes. There is a lot of traction right now about women in trades, because there's a huge deficit of people in trades. And if a woman wants a steady career, that she'll always have work, not only engineering, but trades, being a plumber, being an electrician, there's a lot of opportunities for training. And I hope more women, there's a new magazine that's called Move Over Bob. But the magazine Move Over Bob highlights women in the trades. I think it comes out once or twice a year, but I think it's directed towards schools. And so
that's when you can grab them.
Young girls can see that there are people that look like them that are doing work that with hands. And of course, more of the work is being automated using machines, of course, but also robotics and artificial intelligence. So I think there's such a great opportunity. So another thing I say, seek leadership positions outside your organization, including associations, professional associations, whatever your desire may be. American Institute of Architects. I was in American Society of Civil Engineers, and I was looking at my list, and I think right now I sit on like 3 or 4 boards. When I went back to the University of Maryland, I was on the board of Visitors for Civil Engineering. I had to step down because I was a student. But build your network, and number one, maintain relationships. Don't burn your bridges.
Never.
You will be sitting across the table from that person someday. And nurture those relationships too. I think that's really important.
Yeah, and that actually is not always easy to do.
No,
I mean, it takes
time,
right? And you have to think about it. And you have to do it.
Exactly,
that's the whole thing.
And it could be. I mean, every year I send out Christmas cards and our holiday cards, and that's just like, hey, I'm thinking of you.
Yeah,
just that little thing.
Just a little touch.
Yeah.
After your time as an SVP, you then joined the Architect of the Capitol. which you served as acting architect and the deputy architect. And wow, that's an amazing opportunity to be leading work that's at the center of the nation's history. And I'm just for the listeners, the AOC serves both Congress and the Supreme Court as the stewards and builders for the historic buildings and grounds on Capitol Hill within Washington, D.C. When you stepped into the role of acting architect, you weren't just overseeing projects. You were responsible for preserving the physical symbols of America's democracy. What prepared you for that level of responsibility, both personally and professionally?
That's a very good question. So I served as a deputy architect first. I was selected by Stephen Ayers, the 11th architect of the Capitol, and was appointed by Barack Obama. And then when he retired, I was the acting architect. So I was selected. I remember lying in my bed before I started work and thinking, oh my God, what have I done? Because
I can't imagine.
I think at that moment, it all came to me as like, oh my God, it's all the buildings. It's, 25, the architect of the Capitol is a person in a federal organization, 2,500 people leading 2,500 people. And I ended up having lunch with a friend of mine, Alan Liu, who ended up being city administrator. And he said, sometimes, Christine, people see the capability in you that you don't see yourself. So with that, I was
those are great words.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah.
And then I knew that I was selected, and also there, speaking with my new boss, Mr. Ayers, on some understanding that I'd have to grow into that position. So I think, working across the country, working with all types of projects and all types of people, and then just having the right attitude. I think I came in there with a positive attitude and excited and honored to be there because I was the first woman in that position. It was a fairly new position, but I was the first woman at that level in that organization. So once I settled down and I realized that this is the great place to work, all the projects, all the time I put in, all my interests in people, because one of the things that really excites me is not just doing the work, but getting to know the people. And that means, at the architect of the Capitol, I spent a lot of time, visiting shops, going in the middle of the night to spend time with the third shift, spending time with the people, at the Botanic Garden. So, every year, I wouldn't say it was a field trip, but every year was exciting.
I can only imagine. And the people that you met, I'm sure within Congress and probably even overlaps with the president, and all of that. That on top of your job.
Yeah, my office was in the center of the Capitol. I had very close to the rotunda. I had a beautiful, ornate, historic office, but in the halls in the office was always interesting.
That's exciting.
I remember being in the hall and Barack Obama was like, "Hey guys," the Pope came. King of Jordan was walking by. I met several presidents.
Just a normal day at work.
Yeah, but I got to go to many significant events. I was on, every time I was there, I'd be pinching myself. I can't believe I'm here. But the main thing is working with some amazing people, brilliant people, trades and craftsmen. I got to work closely with the Capitol Police, which are amazing people, and then members of Congress and the staff. I did get yelled at a few times.
Right. I
understand
there are a lot of strong personalities.
Yes. Yeah. We would go to our hearings, and I had a couple of hearings myself, and that you get humbled.
Yeah. But it made you stronger.
Yes, exactly.
Right. So as the deputy architect, you led thousands of employees across engineering, construction, trades, like you were talking about, security, and more. I can't even imagine. And that's probably just a small part. So what cultural or organizational transformations did you implement during your time there that helped the workforce thrive and help them serve the mission of the AOC?
We did some really great work. Interestingly, after I took the position, within 100 days by statute, I was required to start the strategic plan. But that gave me a really great opportunity, and the organization a really great opportunity, because we made the decision that we're going to do it from the ground up.
I was going to say, because normally it's done top down, but that's the best way to do it.
Exactly. So we engaged all 2,500 of our employees to come up with our mission, vision, and values. We engaged them to also come up with our goals in our strategic plan. We use the Jack Welch method, thumbs up or thumbs down to go through that very quickly. We also made sure that we communicated all those goals to them. So that was a start. And within those, there was some cultural changes. My priority always is safety, both, physical safety and psychological safety. But at the time, we prioritized safety, communication, because what we heard was that the employees didn't feel they were listened to. So we had, I remember we used to have 26 town halls twice a year for all of our employees. And that includes 3 shifts. We had employee feedback sessions. We had walk-arounds. I visited, like I mentioned, shops and projects, all times of day and night. I remember coming in sometimes at 11 o'clock at night because we were going to go visit a project. So the strategic plan and giving more opportunities to people, because that was the other thing that people wanted, is more opportunities for advancement. So I think the communication, the strategies, and just making sure I was out there, that I knew their name, I think was really important. So those were some of the cultural changes, and being a leader in safety is really important. The other thing I implemented, which, after we started the strategic plan, was a leadership strengthening program, because I felt I had 18 direct reports, which is a lot.
That's a lot.
I would highly not recommend it, but making sure we were all aligned and we worked as a team, and coming up with our own internal goals. We did 360s on our team. We identify our weaknesses, areas of improvement. We provided professional coaching to all of them, because implementing the strategic plan required great leadership, working as a team, not independently. So that's I focus on those things.
Yeah. I mean, and as we know, employee engagement really is important. And the companies that listen to their employees are the most successful ones, also the most profitable ones.
You're exactly right.
So exactly. I applaud you.
Well, one of the things we did after the development of the strategic plan, because I needed to make sure I followed statute, was the best places to work in the federal aid government. So we had never done that before. So we surveyed our employees. So what we did a little bit different, because we wanted a lot of participation, we ended up getting about between 85 and 90% participation on the surveys.
And that is huge.
Yes, but if you only get 20%. So what we did is we said, take the survey, and then you get an extra hour off of work. So we kind of bribed the employees to participate in the survey, because some people want to take an hour off. They got to pick up a kid. There are a lot of things they want to do. So we did that every 2 years. So we became one of the best places to work in the federal government. We also took the input from the employee engagement surveys, and we looped it into and wrapped it into the strategic plan. And, 3 things: fairness in hiring, fairness in awards, and opportunities were the top 3 things the employees were really focused on. So we created a kind of when we updated the strategic plan, we implemented those things so that they were measurable, and we measured them throughout the years. We had certain action items. So, and then we also, in the employee townhouse, we updated all the employees on exactly what we were doing. We updated them on the survey. We said, these are the things that we're going to do. We heard you. And then here are our actions. And then here is the progress on the actions.
Okay. So after you left the AOC, you rejoined McKissack McKissack as its chief operating officer, overseeing more than $15 billion in program and construction portfolios. that was for projects, huge projects, such as the Washington Nationals MLB Stadium, or as a fan of the Nationals, I call it Nats Park.
Yes.
The O'Hare Airport modernization program, the Martin Luther King Jr. National Memorial, and the Smithsonian National Museum of African American History and Culture. So, which is on my list. It's been here for how many years?
It is a fantastic, fun museum.
That's what I've heard.
Yeah, I mean, you come in and it's a great display on the history of slavery and the civil rights movement, and then you go to the next level, and like Chuck Berry's Cadillac is there, Parliament, Funkadelic, George Clinton's outfits there.
Yeah, I know.
So it's a wonderful museum.
Gotta get a ticket. So as a COO, you oversaw a huge scope of work. Was there a moment that you said to yourself, wow, this is a whole nother level of leadership?
Yes, there was. And I
would have been surprised if you said no.
Yeah. So, and I went back and I was very grateful to work with the team again. And they had done great things since I spent my time at the Architect of the Capitol. But the wow was 3 months after I started, we had to go remote because COVID.
Oh, no.
I remember making the call to Daryl. I think it was on a weekend. I said, we have to close the doors and go remote. Luckily, we had a wonderful team and the transition was very smooth. But different than an office, all of our teams worked on projects. And, and there was a lot of uncertainty about the projects and going to the sites and the teams all over the country. So, Daryl, myself, and we brought in a facilitator. We ended up deciding, number one, we have to take care of our people. So we had the technology. We gave the people what they needed, but they needed to hear from us on a regular basis. So we set up a bi-weekly conference call, the message from the CEO. But we also took a lot of time to talk about the company's leadership, what's happening in the world, how the employees are feeling. We were, Daryl is an African-American owned firm, but going through George Floyd and the dynamics in our headquarters was actually in the middle of all that. I remember going to the office and it had been boarded up, but how are we dealing with the emotions and the concerns of our employees and getting our folks to be able to talk about that freely in a safe environment? And then transitioning back to the projects, and then, even having fun. I mean, we have remote happy hours, so we would send.
I love those.
Well, we ended up
we had them too.
Sending fun packages to all of our employees, just so, we all get on and we all have the same, same different, we had a Hawaiian themed one. So just creating some camaraderie and esprit de corps during that time. And then eventually transitioning back into work.
Yeah, it goes back to employee engagement.
Exactly. Exactly.
So I imagine that construction of this scope is more than just about the building.
Absolutely.
It's actually about transforming communities, cities, and even national narratives. What project pushed you to think about transformation differently and its impact?
Yeah, that's a really good question, because sometimes you show up to work, you do your job, but you don't really see, especially in construction, sometimes you don't see the result. I do go to the Nats game, so I do see the results. So I would say it's, I've had the great fortune to work on projects in school districts, including DC Public Schools, Baltimore, Chicago, LA, Dallas, Austin. And then when I was leaving McKissack, we had just one Fort Worth school district. I remember walking into DC Public Schools before the transformation, before they had received the investment of $1 billion for their capital program. And half the lights were gone. The toilets were covered with black bags, and it smelled terrible, and it was filthy.
I can only imagine.
My thought was like, how can kids learn here in this environment? And then being part of the transformation, and then, walking, I just did a presentation on a school that I worked on. I was actually working with students at Phillips School of Architecture, Construction, and Engineering, which is a newer school that I provided construction management oversight, my team did. and then to go back to the school and talk to the principal, and the graduation rate is almost 100%.
I was going to ask you, I'm assuming that there are actually measures that can
Yes.
prove that those changes, transformations
Yes.
that you made
Yeah.
actually made an impact
Yes.
to the community,
So
to the students.
the graduation rate increased specifically for that school. At the Architect of the Capitol, I ended up hiring as an intern their valedictorian, because at the Architect of the Capitol, we actually would send people over to teach classes there. So there was 2 times and 3 times I was connected to the school, and almost all the kids go to college or they go to a trade school. So if that school wasn't there and it was back to the environment with the black bags, the lights and the smells and the filth and the not working heater, this created a great opportunity for students to pursue, a path, either as a trade or in construction. And, I was fortunate enough at the Architect at the Capitol to have folks teach there and also hire some of the students from there.
That's wonderful. I mean, so when you look back at this chapter of your career, which project actually aligns the most with your leadership philosophy?
I would say the Capitol Dome restoration, because
I remember that. I remember
the
seeing it.
scaffolding.
Scaffolding, yeah.
The lights and so it was a no-fail project. Failure is not an option in this project, and we had to be very intentional. First, we had to we had to pitch the project to Congress, right? So the communication had to be good. We had to have a story why we're doing it. Basically leaky roof, preservation, the icon of democracy around the world. It's important. So we had to have everybody had an understanding, but then we had to pivot, like, how are we going to get this done? And we have to get it done on time. So we brought in not just the technical experts, we brought in the communication experts. Whenever you're doing a big program, if you have a gap in communication, you can either fill it yourself with a good story, or people are going to fill it with bad news.
Right.
So we chose to have a very deliberate communication strategy, which was very effective and fun. And then getting input from both external contractors and ourselves on the best way to approach doing the project. And I think the team, and then one thing we encouraged the Architect of the Capitol, think out of the box, challenge the norm, and we pushed that quite a bit on this one. And then people were very engaged when they said, we have an idea, like, let's pursue it, let's do it. I think great ideas came, and then everybody understood the mission. There was clarity in the mission of this project to complete the dome, versus if you don't have clarity in a project or work that you're doing, you're going to be like, what am I doing here?
Right.
But everybody was very
lead to
clear.
failure.
Yeah, exactly. So we had, not just us, we had people working on the project, who were, came from, you had to be a U.S. citizen, but came from other countries. Everybody knew the mission, and everybody was committed, worked very hard on it. Project completed on time, at budget, no lost time entry. It was a huge success. So that, I would say, embodied like the team focus, and thinking outside of just the project, but like everything else that matters on it.
Yeah, I mean, that sounds like a great, not just a great project, but something that actually means something to the entire nation.
It does.
The world. What am I talking about?
Exactly. So I knew this was very important. So I also want to make sure that people were telling me what was actually going on. So I was up the scaffolding like 3 times a week. I actually, a couple months before starting the project, I wanted to go up the scaffolding, which was like basically 30 floors. And I ended up training at the gym on the Stairmaster to make sure I could go up.
Take it.
Yeah. But I think I also want to make sure the team had what they need. I found that we had to have more safety supervisors. We had to put more emphasis on different things. I also had to provide information to Congress about what was going on. So I want to make sure as a leader I was informed. And then meeting with the project leadership once a week. They tell me, how they're progressing, what they need, what's working, what's not working, but just keeping my ears open very intentionally in person. And I think when they saw me out there, I had my safety gear on, okay, she's out here, she's got her safety gear on, I better have my safety gear on, modeling the way on that.
And that's very important for any leader to model the behavior that you want to see from
Yeah.
people you work with. So in 2022, you took a major step. You formed your own company as a CEO and president of Merdon Strategies LLC. Congratulations on that too.
Thank you.
Said congratulations and kudos a few times today, and they're all warranted. They're all warranted. So starting your own company is a major step. So what inspires you to take that leap?
It's something I had always thought about and wanted to do. And I had just started my PhD program, but I got a call from a person that worked in the Capitol. He worked across the hall from me. And I think he was the CIO for the House. And he said, "Hey, Christine, do you want to help us?" And it was an IT company. And it was basically to help them with some pursuits in the legislative branch since I had the relationships. And I'm like, you know what? That sounds like a really good idea. And it was, and the way they treated me as a member of their company. They even asked me to be on their softball team. You know, they invited me to training, but it was such a great opportunity to work with a team that was, you know, doing great stuff. And then from that, I ended up, you know,
And to be welcomed like that.
oh, absolutely. Absolutely. You know, they were fantastic, especially as a first client, because, you know, that could go a bunch of different ways. So other opportunities, I do program and construction management and owner's advisory, but I tend to be more on the owner's advisory. You know, I have worked with the Smithsonian on owner's advisory services for their organizations. I've worked for NIST on developing their capital program with as a team member. I'm working with a federal agency on a relocation project this project right now is all about building consensus and having the same vision and making sure both organizations, you know, are aligned, providing alignment. So everybody, you know, so the project team has basically one voice, that one idea, big idea. So working on that. So that's been exciting. And I try to pick and choose what I work on. I don't do it necessarily for the money. I'm motivated by my client's success. I get excited when they get wins. And so I work on making my client's dream a reality.
And you have other clients, or have you started with other clients yet? Or?
Yeah, well, I do. I do consulting for an engineering company, and I am looking at, there's a couple pursuits that are happening this year.
It's about opportunities.
Yeah, exactly. So, and I know with pursuits, you can't just market or develop it for 3 months. It is a long game.
It is
for the long program. So there are a couple of opportunities that I'm working on besides working with one client on the projects, another client on consulting with them, and then the two major pursuits.
I wish you all the best.
Thank you. No, it's exciting.
Every founder has a North Star that shapes their company. What's the mission or problem that you set out to solve with Murdon Strategies, and how does it affect your own leadership philosophy?
As I mentioned, it's ways to make my clients' dreams a reality. And I think a lot of times my clients take on these big, mega, daunting tasks of building these major programs. And sometimes working with them sometimes you have to slow it down to go fast. Working with them to focus on what are your goals? What's your why? What are you trying to accomplish? You know, how is the team going to work together? What are each of your goals? How do we have common alignment? So, you know, just basically leadership before you hit the ground running and then run into a lot of obstacles. So working on that front end, and even a lot of clients that I'm pursuing or talking to, having those conversations about what are you doing on the front end and how are you going to keep that theme going, partnering all the way through your project. Because as you know, if you have good leadership, good engagement, good partnership, things go much better. And there's numbers around that. If you have that early planning, I think it's the Construction Industry Institute shows that you can save 9% of a project off. That's pretty big.
And for those projects that are huge.
Yeah, versus, heading right through it because you think you got to get it done. It's going to save time and money. No. You do that upfront planning and getting them to focus on that. Yeah. And then that's a lot of I wouldn't say hand holding. So I think it's, getting them to come to that understanding is really important.
Yeah. When I was working, we used to call it boiling the ocean. Like don't try to do everything right up front. I mean, you have to stand back and think about what you're really trying to do.
Exactly. Because you waste time going backwards and fixing it.
You do. It's crazy. So launching your own company is as much about personal transformation as it is a professional one. What surprised you most about yourself during this transition?
That I found myself more interested in investing in the client's success than my own success, financially. So when I'm working with a client, I get very invested in how they're doing, how the organization's doing, really caring about it. And that's kind of evolved to being more vulnerable. And a lot of times when I show up more vulnerable, they become more vulnerable, and then the trust ends up strengthening.
Right.
And I think once we are able to kind of take away the outside stuff and get to the meat of what we're trying to accomplish, we get so much more done. And so that's what I found.
Yeah.
I think especially in private industry, there's a lot of focus on money, the bottom line, how much you're going to make. And then for me, I'm more focused on the projects and focus on the client success in doing those projects.
Yeah. And I know that approach is so much better than just plowing through. I've worked with consulting firms before, and their top priority was making money.
No.
But then I've also had other firms that were all about how can we make you successful, or we're going to make you successful, and you can. It made a huge difference.
Yeah,
so I can appreciate that.
And then what's going to make you successful?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, because making money is an outcome, and if you don't have that trust and that figuring it out up front, you're not going to make the money.
Right. All right. So we've talked about your career and your leadership, but I also want everyone to know the person behind the work. So let's just chat for a few minutes about what your passions are outside of work and the wisdom that you carry with you.
So a couple of passions. I have a 22-year-old daughter, so she took up a lot of my time, living back at home. She was just graduated, and I'm married. The things I like to do are kind of related to the things I do. I really like to go to historic places and art museums. We usually have one museum or something we see once a weekend. I love, love, love staying at old hotels. It's even better if they're haunted.
I don't know about the haunted piece, but I can appreciate that. But I love.
Or your reputation that they're haunted, because I feel that newer hotels don't have a soul, and old hotels have a soul. Yeah. So whenever we travel somewhere, I try to stay in an older place. And then you learn more about the history there. So that is, and I do things with my family. I like to lift weights and work out at the gym to stay healthy, but probably stay in that art and history place.
Okay. Based on what we've talked about, you've had some high pressure roles. What routines or practices have you adopted along the way that have grounded you when things get really intense?
Laughter.
I love that. That's mine too.
In private and public sector, I've been fortunate to be surrounded with my team and working with people that had great sense of humor. Both the architect, Mr. Ayers, and Daryl McKissack have wonderful senses of humor. And I remember going to a hearing where we just got slammed, and then going back to the office and okay, we'll do better next time. We should have done better. But then being able to laugh at ourselves was important to kind of let the tension go. And it also showed the staff it wasn't the end of the world. This is not the end of the world if you get yelled at. It's not the end of the world because you learn from it. You do better next time. And even Daryl McKissack, she's a wonderful person with a great sense of humor, and being able to, when we didn't get a job, to be able to have a sense of humor about it, or, how are we going to get it anyway? That type of thing.
Yeah, I used to always tell my teams, the work is hard enough.
Yes.
Why can't we have a little fun when we're doing it? And I tell you, it really, even though you always have those moments of, like you just described, but to be able to laugh after, and learn, that's don't take yourself seriously. Take your work seriously, but never take yourself seriously. I love it. So if you could pass along one piece of wisdom to an emerging leader, what would that advice be?
Take care of your team. Both in growing your team, caring for your team during the tough times like COVID, in the construction industry, the mental health crisis that we're facing, the number one thing is take care of your team. Ask them how they're doing. So many people start a meeting and get right to the meeting. Just ask how everybody's doing.
I always love it. Even if it's a couple of minutes, it's just a little bit of
banter.
How are you doing? Or what, banter.
Yeah, they're people.
Yeah, exactly.
They're not machines, they're people. And I think realizing that earlier is better, because I've seen so many be so driven, and then it drives the people out the door.
You get burned out.
Yeah.
Your employees get burned out. So I love that piece of advice. So, and finally, what's exciting you most right now at this point in your career?
So I've done work on many great projects, and I know there are projects at the rest of my career that I'll be working on, that I'm focused on, that I'm excited about. But the main thing is tied to my dissertation is bringing awareness to the mental health and suicide crisis in the construction industry. And we're getting some traction. More companies are donating. It's not just me. I'm just one of an army, that I think that there's going to be a transition in the construction industry where this macho, hard driving, let's get her done at no cost, starts dissipating and going away. And then we start taking better care of the people. It's a long road, and I'm part of the army on that road, trying to make this big change. But I'm excited about that. And the National Academy of Construction, it's now a strategic item for us to start doing work on that. I get invited to conferences where I'm learning more about it, how I can do better at it. So that's what I'm excited about. That way, a parent or a family member doesn't get that call, because that changes and upends their life. So
and it just sounds so fulfilling, so meaningful.
Yes.
What's that you're doing?
Yeah, it's surprising how, when I heard the statistic for every one person that dies on a job site, which is 1,000 people, 5,000 a year die by suicide. And, so I was like, why is this happening? And just being better leaders is one piece of making it better.
Thank you for being
thank you.
My guest on today's show.
I've really enjoyed it. Thank you very much.
And letting us know not about the work, but the person behind it.
I want to thank our excellent host, Bill Farmer, for leading today's conversation. I'm Janelle Millard, president of the LEAP Enterprise, and I am so glad you invested your time with us here on LEAP Today, the show where we talk to leaders, luminaries, and lifelong learners. Each conversation is a chance to see leadership in motion, a reminder that it's never static. We focus on the real work that drives success, moments that shape teams, stretch our thinking, and turn insight into lasting action. If something resonated with you today, put it into practice. Try it in your next conversation, your next decision, or your next challenge. We would love to hear where it takes you. We'll meet you right back here next time as we continue to unlock the full potential of leadership. Until then, you can find us at theleapenterprise.com. Thanks for being part of LEAP Today.